welcome to the Elements of Whiskey podcast, a weekly Dutch whiskey podcast, but today we are doing it in English because we are joined by Hans Martin Hansgaard from Stauning Whisky. We are going to discuss how Danish whiskey is, how Stauning fits in the new world of whiskey. So sit back, relax, grab a glass of Stauning and enjoy this interview with Hans Martin Hansgaard. Hello Hans, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
It's looking very lovely at your place in Denmark today. Lovely weather.
Yeah, finally. June has been awful, but today is amazing. So I decided to go into my garden and sit in the gazebo here. So brought all my whiskey and my iPad here, and we're good to go.
Perfect. We can say work for Stauning is an understatement because you were one of the 9 founding fathers, to say it like that.
That's true. Yeah. So I've been doing this since we began in 2005. And started very small, and it's quite a bit larger now. But I guess we'll delve into that story.
Yeah, definitely. But how did it all start? Like, how did you decide? Like, we want to build a whiskey distillery in Denmark.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice story because we have this. We know exactly how the idea to create Stauning became a reality. It started actually with a radio show in 2005 on Danish national radio, where one of the other founders, Martin is his name,
okay.
The doctor.
Okay.
He was listening to this radio show in his car, and it was just basically a radio program about how to make whiskey in the old world of whiskey in Scotland and Ireland and Canada and US and Japan. So it just occurred to him, okay, we have exactly the same ingredients, we have the same weather, we have the same raw materials as they do in Scotland. Mm-hmm. So why is no one making whiskey in Denmark? And he decided to call some of his good friends and family, his brothers, and we met in 2005 to discuss if we thought it would make sense to make whiskey in Denmark. And we quickly we realized, okay, it kind of makes sense because we are from the western part of Denmark, from West Jutland, and it's farmland, and we could just see all the barley on the fields. Mm-hmm. And we have some of the best water in Denmark, so we thought, okay, we definitely have what we need to make good whiskey.
And then the next part was building a still or distillery?
Yeah, we started very small. We ended up being the 9 founders who were willing to spend some time, a lot of weekends doing this, and also invest a bit of money into this adventure. Mm-hmm. So we decided on how much capital, how much we needed to buy all the necessary equipment, and it was actually very little money. We each of us 9, we came with about 1,500 euros. Oh, okay. That was the funding capital for Stauning Whisky back in 2005.
That's manageable.
It's manageable, but you have to. We were young at that time. We were most of us were in our late 20s, early 30s. Mm-hmm. And so it was what we thought, okay, this is what we can afford, and we'll just start out very small and get the equipment we needed, and also all the permits we needed to distill in Denmark, because of course we are the pioneers of whiskey making in Denmark. Mm-hmm. And so the government didn't really have a program that could just roll out and say, okay, here's the permits you need, the documents you need to fill out, and you can go from here.
But there were no distilleries in Denmark at that point, or no whiskey distilleries?
No whiskey distilleries in Denmark. Denmark is known for schnapps, aquavit, these types of spirits, and the thing is, it has been through all of the last century, it was controlled by government. So we had something called the Danish liquor factories, and they would make all the spirits for the schnapps and aquavit in Denmark. Okay. So it's also a kind of a story of being also a pioneer in spirits in Denmark. Not only whiskey, but also in spirits.
Okay, and you started off, I don't want to flash forward too much, but I didn't believe you started out with the same amount of stills that you currently have, so it was just you 9 in a backyard with whiskey stills, something like that, or how did it start out?
Yeah, one of the other founders, his name is Mogens, he's the father of Martin, and he used to work as a butcher, and he would butcher pigs and cows in the back of his house. He had a small butchery in the back of his house, so he would go to local farmers, bring in the stock they had to butcher, and he would do it in the back house. So we had this very nice room that was easy to convert from an old butchery into a distillery. It was very small. It was like maybe 25 or 30 square meters.
Okay, yeah.
But that's all we needed, because our initial goal, it was to make, we wanted to fill maybe one cask of whiskey every year, 1 200-liter cask.
Okay.
So we would meet a few weekends after we set it all up, and we would distill maybe 10 or 15 liters of hearts, put it into the cask, add it to the cask, and then go from there. That was our plan to do that. But all we needed was basically we got a set of pot stills from Spain and Portugal, and we set those up, very very old style alembic pot stills, and they were heated by paella burners. So we had this direct flame underneath the stills. And so we had a very simple philosophy for Stauning. We wanted to use only local raw materials, so the water from the ground beneath the distillery, the local barley, and also we wanted to make smoky whiskies. That was our initial goal, was to make a smoked single malt. So we wanted to find a source for local peat.
Okay.
And, we also found that.
Okay, so everything is local, and you started out with the name Stauning. And why that name?
We didn't actually. But that's maybe it's besides the point. But because there was no other distilleries in Denmark, whiskey distilleries, we actually started out with the name Danish Whisky, because we were the only ones. So we thought, okay, why not call ourselves for Danish Whisky? But we soon left that name, because we kind of realized that it should reflect the place even more. We wanted to be more locally rooted. So we decided to go with Stauning as the name instead, because Stauning it's actually two things in Denmark. It's a small village, and it's also the name. It's a surname, and coincidentally, it's the surname of a very famous Danish guy called Thorvald Stauning, who used to be a Danish prime minister in the 30s in Denmark. Okay.
Maybe we can go in a little bit more depth later when there's a whiskey which closer reflect him. Talking about whiskey, at this point, how many whiskeys, like what does your core range of whiskeys be? Like what do you have currently?
At that point in 2005 or now?
How did it develop? Maybe that's a better...
Yeah, we can start at that, yeah. When we started, we thought we were only going to make one new make, one raw spirit. And because of where we are in Denmark, west coast, very close to Ringkøbing Fjord, which is the fjord in western Denmark, and we were also close to the North Sea. So we thought, and we wanted to only make this peated single malt whiskey. Our big idols at that time, and basically also still is, it was Ardbeg. And we thought, okay, Ardbeg, they get away with making only one type of spirit. They distill peated new make, peated single malt. So we should probably do the same. We didn't think that there would be this development in styles over time that we've seen now with the new World Whisky and all the distilleries opening in all of the world, basically. So we thought, okay, we can stick to one type.
And at what point did you guys decide to change it up a little?
I think when we got more into whiskies, some of us founders, as I said, we are 9 founders. There's 4 engineers. There's a doctor, there's a helicopter pilot, there's a butcher, there's a chef, and then there's me, and I used to work as a teacher. So we came with very different backgrounds, and also we came with very different interests in whiskey. Some of the founders were really not drinking whiskey at that time, didn't enjoy whiskey much, but wanted to be part of the adventure, part of the friendship, part of the group. So decided to take on this adventure anyway. But we developed a taste over the years, more of course for whiskey. For myself, I had a huge interest in whiskey before, so I didn't need to develop any new tastes. But we soon realized that we could do more. One of the things about Stauning is that we do everything from scratch. We are what's called an in-house distillery. We don't buy anything processed from anyone else.
Okay.
We do the floor maltings, we do the mashing, the kilning, the mashing, the fermentation, the distilling, the maturation, the bottling. Everything has always been done by ourselves.
Okay.
So that's a very unusual thing these days. Mm-hmm. Also in the old world whiskey distilleries. So, but this gives us freedom to experiment and to do exactly how we want. And the first type of whiskey we started making, of course, we did two types very quickly. We did the peated single malt and the non-peated. So we had these two, a peated expression and an unpeated expression. And then soon we thought, okay, we should also do a rye whiskey, because we in Denmark, and I'm pretty sure that in Holland too, they have rye bread, black bread, dark bread, Roggen in German. Yeah. So we have this very close connection culturally to rye in Denmark, and it goes back, I guess, to rye bread, because it's kind of the national food. Most people, they know about smørrebrød, these open-faced sandwiches they're sometimes called in English. Yeah. And it's just a piece of rye bread with a lot of stuffing on top. So it can be fish or meats or vegetables. Really nice. So we thought we had this very good connection to rye, and also we started to enjoy rye whiskies a lot. And also there was very few people making rye whiskey in the world at that time. Most American distilleries had moved to bourbon. Yeah. Of course, Canadians has always done rye whiskey, but bourbon was really taking over market shares from rye whiskies, and we just thought that rye whiskey was really interesting and this cultural link to it. So we decided quite early to make rye whiskey.
Okay, so that is basically like the core range, like a peated single malt, an unpeated single malt, and a rye whiskey. And did you guys stick to that, or did it develop even more during the next years?
This is kind of the base spirits that we are making since 2009. Okay. We settled on those in 2009 and stuck to those. We have added one more to the mix, which is a smoked rye new make. Okay. I can show you how it looks. Okay. Yeah. So this is the smoked rye new make, and we call this one Curious. Okay. And of course, this is bottled as a new make, but we also have smoked rye new make on cask, of course, maturing, but we haven't released it yet.
Okay, and what I'm wondering is, like, this is maybe a little bit of more geeky question. When I hear about like American rye whiskies, they often use a mash bill of like 95% rye and 5% malted barley, just to get like all the sugars and enzymes right. Do you guys also do that, or do you guys use 100% rye whiskey for your new make?
We have actually gone the opposite direction. Oh, okay. We have our mash bills has been we've tried different things, but okay. We are somewhere between 70% rye and 51% rye. Okay. And the rest is barley. So from 49% barley to 30% barley.
Okay, it's more barley heavy than maybe the American rye whiskies. Okay.
It is, yeah.
Okay. And I'm very curious, because for like our Dutch listeners, we also have sample packages, and in this month's sample package we had the Stauning floor malted rye batch number 4. So that's the one we got here in the Netherlands. I would like to ask you, like, you have a bottle by hand, by any chance?
Of course I do.
Perfect. Shall we try a glass? Because I'm really excited to try the rye from Stauning, but also have it guided by you and let you, as a teacher, teach us a little bit more about the flavors.
Yeah, so I poured myself a glass here of our rye whiskey, and I should, as a background to when we try it now, I should say that something that also makes our rye whiskies different from American rye whiskies is that we, as I said, we have our own floor maltings. Okay. So quite early on, we have always been malting our barley. Of course, we wanted to use malted barley. There's so much flavor in malted barley compared to green barley. So early on, we decided to. Now we have the expertise to malt barley. Why not try to malt the rye as well? So we decided to malt every grain that goes through our distillery.
Okay.
So this is malted barley and malted rye whiskey. So that's another way it differentiates from American style rye whiskies, and most of them anyway.
And also, you guys are pot stilling everything, so it's not a mixture of column and pot still. It's just 100% pot still.
It's 100% pot still. Yeah, we started out doing pot stills, and Stauning is kind of, if you go back to the history of Stauning, it's we've been to I would say 3 huge chapters in Stauning's history.
Okay.
The first chapter is the butchery. The second is when we, in 2009, we moved from the butchery to an old farmhouse, which is, we are still at that farmhouse, but now the farmhouse is administration and visitor center. And in 2018, we stopped production in the farmhouse and moved it to the new distillery that maybe you can show photos of it on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. We are going to, and we're also going to discuss a lot more about the new distillery, because it's a very interesting building.
But we have always stuck to how we started, and we started with using small pot stills, and we have always used open flame on both the wash side and the spirit side. Okay. So we have stuck to this. So even though we have grown quite a bit, we never changed production methods.
Okay, very cool. I'm very excited. I got the rye ready for a nosing and tasting. What can we get out of this rye in sense of a flavor?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is rye whiskies traditionally are a bit. They're very spicy. They're a bit fiery. They can be very dry. So they are not beginners whiskies most of the time when they come from America. But since ours is made the way it is, floor malted rye, floor malted barley, and then distilled like a single malt, it kind of has more in common with a single malt than with a rye whiskey. But it's a single malt, but with a rye whiskey mash bill made of rye and barley. So it just gives it a completely different mouthfeel and flavor profile to American rye whiskies. It's very smooth. It still has some of the spice, but it's just a mellow and very easy drinkable whiskey. And I often serve it to people who say they don't really like whiskey. I hear so many times they get really surprised on how easy drinkable and how nice this whiskey is. It kind of builds a bridge between rum and the whiskey world, and you wouldn't expect that from a rye whiskey.
Okay. I'm really looking forward to it. It smells very, very spicy indeed. But
you get all this in the nose. I always find citrus and also some cinnamon, of course, cereals, also the toffee notes, vanilla, and green apples, and even chocolate. And there's also still this mint or menthol you often find in
rye whiskies.
Rye whiskies.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind to me was more like these Christmas spices. Indeed, like this cinnamon and this hot chocolate type of like cacao.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, really cool. And also, of course, we have quite a bit of oak influence, and also I would say black pepper.
Yes, something very spicy. Yeah, but if I look at the color, it has a very nice dark color. You guys don't put an age statement on the bottle, so like we have no idea. Like, can you tell us a little bit about like the age, what we can expect of it?
Of course, it's no secret how old they are. We usually mature our rye whiskies when we bottle them for the core range between 3 and 4 years. Okay. And we decided to use American virgin oak casks. Okay. We just feel this American white oak. It really works well with our rye whiskies. We tried European oak as well with a denser structure, but it didn't give us the flavor we like in our rye whiskey. American oak gives a sweeter, touffier flavor to the whiskies. And the color is all natural color, nothing added, nothing filtered? Not at all. It would be really against our philosophy and ideas to add anything to our whiskies. So all the color comes from the cask. All right, cool. I'm looking forward. I'm gonna try a sip. We practiced before we started recording. I now know in Danish how to say cheers. So Hans, skål. Skål.
it has such a different taste than what you would expect. You would expect like this very, not maybe aggressive, but this most intense, spicy and peppery notes. But the first taste is very smooth, very, very sweet, very caramelly, and the spices are really hitting in the aftertaste.
It's I like that description. It's really good, and I completely agree. It's just, even though it's 48%. Yeah. It doesn't burn you. It's not that aggressive on the alcohol. It just goes down really easy, and it's a very smooth whiskey. Also, when you think about it, this is only 3 to 4 years old.
Yeah, definitely.
It kind of tastes older and bigger than that.
Yeah, it is way fuller, more viscous, more denser. Yeah, definitely. And is this are there plans to mature the rye whiskey any longer?
We are maturing them longer, but I would say we kind of like how it is at this point, between 3 and 4 years. We might add a little age to it over the years, but we feel that at this age we it's a good compromise between cask influence. Mm-hmm. And also, the raw materials, the taste of the cereals, the grains. Yeah. The longer we would mature it, the more the cask would take over, the more oakiness we would have in, and it would suppress some of the fruitier notes, the green apple, the citrus, pear, and the citrus notes especially. So I think that's also. I know we are talking about styles in New World distilleries, and one of my points in being a New World distillery is often that we shouldn't lean too much towards what the old world did. We should come up with something new. There's so much to explore in whiskey. Mm-hmm. So sticking to a different style just makes sense. Why make something similar to an American or a Scottish whiskey when we can make something that is uniquely Danish? Yeah. And has a different profile and will appeal to someone else if because the Scots, they are really, really good at making Scotch single malt whiskies. Mm-hmm. So if you want that taste, buy something Scottish. If you want to try something else, go to New World and explore what we are doing.
It's very interesting, but it also feels like giving you more freedom to experiment. And if I take a look at like the rye whiskey, there's a very cool experiment you guys did with some very unusual casks. And I noticed you actually wearing a shirt of it. But can you tell us more about like the bastard?
Yes, I can. I showed you, to go a little bit back, I showed you this one, the Curious, and I have the clear bottle here. Yeah. We have a series of whiskies called Research Series. Okay. This is where we do experiments with types of whiskey that hasn't been done before in the world of whiskey. Okay. And this one definitely has never been done before. It's a rye whiskey base. So it is 70% rye, 30% barley, and malted rye, malted barley, and then smoked with a mixture of heather, local Danish heather, the plant that grows on the box in Western Jutland. Heide, it's called in German. I don't know what it's called in
Heidegras for our Dutch listeners. Yes.
Yeah, and also smoked with peat. So peat and heather smoked rye new make. Okay. Very unusual. So this was the first. First expression in our research series. Mm-hmm. The second one, I don't have the bottle here. I didn't bring it, but I have the T-shirt. Yeah. So the Stauning Bastard, that was called. That was also a rye whiskey, matured for about 3 years in virgin cask, and then finished for about a year in Mexican mezcal casks. Okay. So to try something completely unique to our rye whiskeys, bring some of this smokiness, some of the edge from a mezcal into the rye whiskey, and it has been quite successful.
For people at home,
doesn't taste how you would think it would. So.
For the people at home, like mezcal, what can they compare it to?
Mezcal, I would compare to like a grappa, or it's basically, to put it simple, it's a smoked tequila. Okay. It's made from agave, a Mexican plant, and they will burn and smoke these and cook these agave and make a pulp from it and ferment it and distill it. And it has and most of the time they are white spirits, but they also mature some of them in the oak barrels.
Okay, so it's so it's more like from agave. People can also make tequila, but the smoked variant is called a mezcal. Okay, perfect. I'm up to date. Okay.
Yeah. And a fun fact is that I always call this one the Nordic Mascara, because when you try this and you compare it to a mezcal, you will know exactly why. It's a smoked new make, smoked white spirit, and they have a lot in common, even though one is made from grains and the other one is made from a plant, cactus-like plant.
Okay. And the bastard is so finished for a year on these mezcal barrels. Mm-hmm. And how would you describe like the result? Because like now we are actually trying the unpeated normal rye.
Yes.
But how does it compare to the bastard?
It's the bastard just has I would say it's still of course a rye whiskey with a lot of this virgin cask influence. Mm-hmm. So you get all the same notes, but it's a little bit more floral, and also in the very late aftertaste, it has this smoky kick, very short smoky kick that's quite surprising. Okay. So that's how the bastard came out.
And there's this very cool story, and I'm not sure if it actually is true. I heard this during a tasting once. The president, Stauning himself, there was this campaign he led where he said it's going to be Stauning or Kaos.
Yes.
Essentially saying, or you vote for me, or Denmark will be in chaos. Is this actually happen?
It did happen. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a story that every Dane knows. Okay. And more Danes know of Thorvald Stauning, the prime minister, mm-hmm. than they know of the village Stauning. The village Stauning is very small. I think maybe 800 or 1,000 people living there.
Oh, wow, okay.
But Thorvald Stauning, he was a hugely popular social democrat prime minister in Denmark. And this campaign goes back to, he launched it in 1935. So it's really groundbreaking, I would say, to come up with a slogan, an election slogan for that Stauning, choose Stauning or have chaos. Yeah. Nearly 100 years ago. So every Dane knows this poster. His poster he put up to win the election, and we were often, since when we chose the name Stauning, people would always think it was because of Thorvald Stauning and the prime minister, but it was actually the village we are based in.
Okay, but there's one whiskey that also gives a little nod to this whole story, because you also bottled a whiskey called Kaos, right?
We did, because we thought we would acknowledge this story and kind of honor him and his great election poster. So and also meet all the people who connect Stauning to this poster. So we did a whiskey called Stauning Kaos, which is basically it's a mashup. I wouldn't call it a blend, because everything is from Stauning, everything is malted, so it's a malt type whiskey, but it's a mixture of our rye whiskey, malted rye, mm-hmm. the malted barley, mm-hmm. and the smoked malted barley.
Okay.
And we will mature it in different casks, and then we will vat them together, and dilute it down to 46%, mm-hmm. and bottle it as Stauning Kaos.
Okay.
It's very, very interesting whiskey. Give it to a whiskey expert, and they will never know what it is, because it has all these influences from different grains, from different barrels, different casks, and it's difficult to. Is it Scottish? Is it New World? Is it American? Very difficult to pinpoint. It has this slightly smoky flavor. It has mm-hmm. a lot of spice from the rye and a lot of sweetness from the malted barley. So it's a very versatile whiskey. You can drink it neat. You can have it in cocktails, and you can make all the classic whiskey cocktails. Manhattans and old fashions, boulevardiers. They work really well with this one.
Okay, I'm really cool. We've been talking a little bit about the early stage of the distillery, but I want to go like straight to 2022, where you guys are right now, because how big is the distillery? For like, how big of a area do you guys cover currently?
The size of the distillery, I think you often would measure it in how the output, how big is the output. We have a lot of farmland, because we're building warehouses now, so we also have we cover quite a bit of area now. Mm-hmm. The distillery is still quite small by international standards, but by Danish standards, it's actually the biggest distillery in Denmark now. Not only for whiskey, but for spirits in general. In general.
Oh, wow.
So it is quite large by Danish terms. We can make about 1 million liters of new make. We can produce every year.
Okay. Wow.
And what I'm very proud of is that we still do it exactly how we did it back in the butchery.
Okay.
It's still floor maltings. We have our own kiln. We use our own peat to dry the smoked whiskies. We do all the mashing, fermenting, distilling ourselves. And a very important point is that we never left these small pot stills with the direct flame under.
Okay.
We still have the same. But back then we had 2. Now we have 24.
Oh, wow.
Which is
yeah, because like in Scotland, you mostly have maybe 2, a bigger distillery 4 or 6, but you would have like these big like 8,000, 9,000 liter stills to make whiskey. But like how big are these like small pot stills?
Yeah, or you would even have maybe 20,000 liter stills in Scotland. But when we built the new distillery, when we laid out the plans to the new distillery, we could go 2 ways, kind of. We knew we were going to do the floor maltings ourselves and so on, but the distillery we debated a lot because it would be so much easier to get 2 or 4
big
giant pot stills, install those, cleaning, everything would be so much friendlier. Mm-hmm. But we couldn't. We decided, oh no, we cannot leave our house style, which is small distilleries, small pot stills, and open flame under each and every one of them. So to make this 1 million liter, which was our goal, we had to size up to 24 pot stills, and the size of the stills now is 2,000 liter each.
Oh wow! And how does it impact the flavor, like having a small pot still?
It has a lot to say. It's one of the more important points, of course. I think it's the sum of everything we do that make a whiskey. But for us, for Stauning, our distillery, it is the still room. It's so iconic. It's people when they walk in there, it's just stunning to see these 24 pot stills.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's definitely a big part of our house style to have the influence of these 24 pot stills. What it brings to the whiskey is a combination of an enormous surface area compared to the whiskey and the still, because there's only 2,000 liters in each still, or the stills are 2,000 liters, so there's even less whiskey or low wines in the stills. So the surface area, the contact with copper, is the greatest of any distillery in the world, because we have these small stills. So and copper chemically reacts to what's in the still, and it isolates sulfur, and sulfur is not nice in whiskey. That is not desirable in whiskey. So that gives just a very smooth whiskey. The other thing that it does is that, as you said, we have open flame. We have direct fire under each of the stills. So we do get some burning in the stills. We get this Maillard effect, which is the same effect, caramelization effect, from cooking. Yeah. You can boil a steak, but you can also put a steak on the barbecue, and the taste will be very different because you get this caramelization. Mm-hmm. We do the same in our whiskies. We have another Stauning trademark is we have unclear wort. Okay. So when we ferment and when we send the fermented beer into the stills, it has a lot of solids, and these solids will drop to the bottom of the stills because we have no rummagers. We are not stirring the stills; they're completely left alone. So we will get a slight burning because we do a very light filtration of the beer before distillation. So we get this burning and we get a caramelization. And I think from when we did the tasting notes on the rye, you immediately pick up on this caramel side to the whiskey, and that definitely comes from
open fire.
From the open fire. Yes.
Okay. And you said there are a lot of farmlands around distillery. You actually work your own lands. You also produce your own grains, everything.
We don't. We decided to stick to making whiskey and leave the farming to people who know how to do that. Okay. So we are not doing any farming, but we work very closely with 2 farmers who supply us with all the grains we need, both the barley and the rye.
And it's all local. You were also mentioning the water, like you having the clearest water in Denmark. What type of water source is it? Is it a lake or a spring or?
It's in that part of Denmark we have the soil is very sandy, so we have a quick filtration of rainwater, surface water to the underground water reservoirs. So we just use groundwater.
Okay.
And it's I live in Copenhagen now, and I can tell you that the water difference from Copenhagen to Stauning is enormous.
Okay.
I have a hard time drinking water from the tap here.
Okay.
And in West Jutland, it tastes amazing. So we have that, and that of course is an important part of our whiskies as well. And that we have this very pure source of unlimited source, basically of clean water.
Okay, so we have like local grains, we have very clean water. Then floor malting is a very big thing. I heard you mention it quite some times now, but having like a distillery that produces 1 million liters of spirit a year, how many tons upon tons of grains do you need to malt to do this? Because
I wish I knew. I wish I had those numbers. I don't have them with me. I could definitely mail them to you after the show here. But of course, it's a lot of grains. But as you can probably imagine, it's only 2 farmers who supply us with grains. Mm-hmm. So it's actually not that in the big scale of things. Mm-hmm. It's not too bad. Breweries like Carlsberg or even larger distilleries like the proper Scottish large distilleries, like they would make maybe 20 million liters of whiskey or 30 million liters of whiskey every year. Mm-hmm. But grains are it's not that huge an amount we need.
Okay, and what does floor malting your own grains actually change? Like, why would you do all that work? Because it sounds like an awful lot of work.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of that was a wasp here. Oh. There's a lot of pride in it to just be able to do everything yourself. I think that it's so important for us to have this story of Stauning doing everything ourselves. Mm-hmm. And also it gives us a lot of freedom to experiment. We can make our own mash bills. We can use whatever grains we would like to use, and also the final step of malting is of course kilning, mm-hmm. where we dry the malted barley and malted rye, and this has been very important for us because we are actually the only ones in Denmark making Danish smoked whiskey with peat for now. Other Danish distilleries are working on it, but we've been doing it since we started in 2005.
Oh, wow.
And that's because we have our own floor maltings, we installed our own kilns, and that gives us a freedom not to buy Scottish smoked barley and distill in Denmark on Scottish barley. I think for us it just makes a lot more sense to get the grains from Denmark and to smoke it with Danish peat. Also, we could never have if we were to buy our smoked grains. Mm-hmm. How could we have made the heather smoke? We couldn't. Yeah. So the heather smoke part is also a part of having our own floor maltings. So it all comes down to if you do everything yourself, you can also change everything in every step ahead of after floor malting.
All right. Then, yeah, peat, we talked about this, is all like local peat. Is it like something you guys control very closely, or is it more up to luck in that sense?
Yeah, we of course when we make our smoked whiskies, we started using peat. Mm-hmm. Then we started experimenting with heather, and then we started experimenting with combining them. Mm-hmm. So we actually phased out. We had a whiskey called Stauning Peat, mm-hmm. and then we had one called Stauning Heather, and now we combined them into one whiskey called Stauning Smoke, which is kind of the full terroir experience of Stauning, where we take all the smoke sources, the good smoke sources we can find, and combine them in one whiskey. Mm-hmm. So that's the one we're doing now, Stauning Smoke.
You said all the good, so that makes me it implies that there was also another experiment where you guys were like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, we tried. We've tried different sources of peat that we didn't like. We have also tried to burn seaweed. That didn't turn out well. I've just contacted a local or Danish hemp maker.
Okay.
They grow bio hemp in Denmark, used for textile and rope, and I guess also for this what's it called, THC, the medicine you can get, and it will relieve pain and so on. But so we will try and make a hemp smoked whiskey at some point with Danish hemp.
Okay, cool.
And I know, I think it smells nice. I'm not a smoker myself, but the smell is nice. So that will come eventually. Okay. Yeah, hemp smoked Danish whiskey. I think it makes sense.
I'm very looking forward to try that once, definitely. But I'm wondering, you said you are currently living in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
So I can assume that you don't oversee distillation. Who's in charge of distillation currently?
We have a team of distillers working. I think we have 7-8 men working in distilling at Stauning, all trained by ourselves through the years, and very high expertise in overseeing every process in distilling now. And they can just go out there. They can do the same thing every day, do malting exactly how it's supposed to be, and the mashing, the fermenting, and the distilling. So it's working really well. We are making all the whiskies we are supposed to, and to a very high quality.
I was wondering, you mentioned that this having these small pot stills and these open fire pot stills, that it's very important. If I'll ask some other people in the whiskey industry, they say like, no, but water or barley or yeast or cask or maturation, everyone has their own particular little focus point. Would you say that distillation in the small pot stills is the focus point of Stauning, or is it more the handcrafted, doing it yourself part?
I think I made a note on this because it's difficult to answer actually when we have the way we make whiskey. It is the combined effort, I think, the craft part and just the philosophy of doing everything ourselves on local raw materials. The goal for Stauning is to make an expression of our area. We want to make it as good as we possibly can by using the best methods available. That's why we settled on floor malting. It's really difficult, takes a lot of time, costs a lot of money and a lot of work. And also the pot stills, it does not make sense to have 24 pot stills. It's nobody should do this because it's so labor intensive, just cleaning them every day, all 24 of them.
Oh God,
and,
yes.
With the burning, because we have the open flame underneath, I wouldn't advise it to anyone. but it's the sum of all these things we do that make Stauning like it is. So I wouldn't want to take out any part of it.
It's the sum, okay. And if you want to, like for example, like let's say we would sit together, having a few glasses of Stauning, and then say like, okay, let's make a new expression. How would it work? Would you guys make experiment and create a whiskey with those experiments, or do you say like, okay, this is my vision and I want to create this, and let's figure out how I can?
Yeah, an example could be, I have a bottle here, we didn't talk about this, but it's the third expression in the research series, and of course a lot of our experiments comes from the research series. And this one, it kind of arose by wanting to make a tribute to the classic Manhattan cocktail. Okay. And I know many of the avid whiskey fans, whiskey geeks, they will say you never make cocktails from this good whiskey. Yeah. But I think that's also part of the new world approach to it. Okay. That we are very willing to experiment with everything in our whiskeys. And from my personal view is if you do the cocktail right, if you make sure you have the right glass, you have good ice, you don't use lemon out of a can, you squeeze it yourself, you just be very careful with what you do and choose the best ingredients. Then by all means experiment with the great experiences the cocktails can bring. Okay. But this of course it's no cocktail, it is a proper whiskey. Okay. But the idea was to make a tribute to the Manhattan cocktail. So how did we do that? Manhattan, of course, is made from rye whiskey and vermouth and bitters. So we took our rye whiskey, matured it for 3 years in virgin cask, and then finished it for about a year in Spanish vermouth casks. Okay. So we get this influence from the wood that has used to contain Spanish vermouth, and we get something that is easily recognizable as something similar to the cocktail of Manhattan, but it's a whiskey. that has some of the flavors from a Manhattan cocktail. And it just communicates it really clean. What, as soon as you smell it, you'll know, okay,
this is a Manhattan.
This smells of vermouth.
And did you guys start out with the idea, or did you just had the opportunity to try these Spanish vermouth casks and just figured out like, okay, this actually tastes like a vermouth, like a Manhattan? Which way did it work out?
It started out with a love for the cocktail and searching for casks that could give us this expression in the whiskey.
Okay. We've been talking a very long time now, but we didn't have time to start with this very interesting topic, which I actually invited you over to talk about, New World Whisky. This is something we mentioned this episode, and last episode we had a conversation with Stefanos about this. But I would like to hear it from you. Like, what do you feel like? What is a New World Whisky?
Yeah, the definition I think is quite simple because we have the Old World. I think I mentioned them earlier: Scotland, Ireland, Canada, US, and Japan.
Yeah.
That is basically where they've been making whiskey for more than 100 years. And then we have New World whiskies, which is rest of the world. Whiskey distilleries are popping up everywhere. I'm sure you discussed this. Yeah, so that would be my definition of New World.
And do you feel like it also, like if we take a look at Stauning and any Scottish distillery, do you feel like you guys try to differ from it, or does it just happen by chance?
Oh, I think we do a lot to do things differently. Kind of our reason to exist, and is to do things differently. Of course, Stauning might be a little bit unusual from many other New World distilleries because our methods are very old school. Many of them, even the methods of mentioned 100 times now, floor malting.
Yeah. Very
few distilleries still do that, and also the smaller pot stills with open flame. It's also an old technique, 100, 200 years old technique that most distilleries have left now because it's so labor intensive and expensive. So most distilleries will use either column stills, and if it's a Scottish single malt, they will use pot stills, but with steam coils, steam heated stills. It just changes the flavor. So Stauning is kind of this hybrid between very innovative, but also with very traditional, very proven methods. So we kind of balance between those two.
It's a very difficult balancing act, I can imagine. But you said you're working closely with local peat sourcers and very local farmers. Is there any other way you guys incorporate locals into this whole new product?
I would just say it's by being part of the local community. I'm sure you have regions in Holland that are also kind of on the outskirts of Amsterdam and the bigger cities. So, and Stauning is very much that. We are on it's a part of Denmark where it's mostly farmland. Traditionally, it wasn't good farmland, and it was fishermen and farmers, and it still is a place where people move from. They when they grow up and they move to bigger cities and leave this region of Denmark. So it's being popularized a little bit, and we see a lot of closed shops and half dead cities, and so we just a lot of our pride in Stauning has been to just create jobs. Basically, we've created a tourist attraction in Stauning. We have between 20 and 30,000 visitors from all over the world every year. So it's becoming quite a local business as well. We employ between 30 and 40 people at the distillery, and so I have a lot of pride in just that fact that we are part of local community. People are proud of Stauning, and we are proud of being where we are. So it just gives a lot to the local community.
And
both ways.
You guys been doing this since 2005. Can you, as a veteran in the new world, to say it like that, can you give a tip to somebody who's sitting with some friends at a bar thinking about a distillery? Like, what should a New World Whisky distillery do if they would ask you for advice?
I would say, for me, the local rooting is very important. Not only in working with the people who live there, but also look around you. What does the landscape offer? What makes sense to do here? Make a distillation of the local area. What does Stauning taste like? Don't try to make an Ardbeg. Don't try to make a Glenmorangie or a Macallan.
Yeah.
Make something that makes sense in community, by the natural resources, also from a sustainability viewpoint. Why import malted grains, or just look around you and see, okay, do we have cornfields? Maybe we should make a bourbon style, if that's what we have here.
Yeah.
That would, I think that is definitely what makes sense to me. And also, don't be afraid to experiment and to develop new flavors in whiskey, like the Curious or the El Clásico on the vermouth cask, because people are curious. It's like the beer world. We've seen this for years with distilleries like Brewdog and Mikkeller, really willing to experiment and discover, and not to take anything away from Old World. I collect Old World whiskies and also New World, and I drink it quite often, and also the same with beer. But there's just so many possibilities in whiskey, and Scottish distilleries are, I guess, with a good right, they're more conservative because they have a good thing going.
Yeah, they have a heritage and a tradition.
Yeah, they have a heritage. Yeah.
Okay, and this might be a very controversial question, but I still want to ask it to you. Why should people explore new and younger whiskies and newer and younger whiskey distilleries instead of like sticking to the tried and true from like century-old Scottish whiskies? Why should they explore this?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it. There's a lot going on, and some of the new distilleries, New World distilleries, we haven't gone lazy. We are still very adventurous. We have very high ambition, and I think that you'll be surprised in what we can actually do by rediscovering old and proven methods that has now been abandoned by most Scottish distilleries. We are actually reinventing them, putting them to use again, making a whiskey that would resemble a Scottish whiskey, maybe how it was made 50 years ago or 60 or 100 years ago. But that, of course, is different from every distillery. But I've seen now at whiskey shows. I was at last autumn. I was in London for the Whisky Exchange whiskey show, and people, they were really seeking out new experiences. They were visiting the New World distilleries there more than they would go to try the old, because they were here last year. I tried it last year. I've tried it all my life. Yeah. So why should I try an Ardbeg 10 again when I can try something completely new?
Yeah. That's a very good reason. It's a very compelling reason. And if people were sitting at home currently and they would be sitting, like jumping around the room, excited to hear all the stuff you guys are doing, can they? You said like you had 20,000 visitors, so they can visit you guys?
Definitely, yeah. We are always open for visitors. We have guided tours every day, and in German, English, and Danish. Okay. So it's just going to our homepage and making sure you book in advance, because especially now it's season for tourists in that part of Denmark. So many of the tours are fully booked, but you can always find a tour
on the website. And how can people stay up to date about all the new things you guys are doing?
Yeah, of course, the regular channels. I would really recommend our newsletter, or Instagram or Facebook. That's
the best way to get in touch.
Stay in touch. Yeah.
And is there maybe a little news, like a new whiskey coming up or something, which you can tell us about, or give us a little tease?
Yeah, we have this the Kaos we talked about. Yeah. We have a special expression of that coming in a month or two, 3 months maybe, called Rum Kaos. So it's a expression of these three types of whiskies vatted together and matured in rum casks from all over the world. Actually, there's some Fiji, some Barbados, and
you guys felt like the Kaos needed even more Kaos to do it, yeah?
Even more, yeah. And that's I like that about Kaos. You never know what you get. So.
I'm very excited, and it's so great to hear that you never know what you're going to get. Hans, thank you so much for your time. People at home, please give them a like on Facebook and follow them on Instagram. It's definitely a worthwhile, especially the Instagram is a very pleasure to see all the stuff there guys are posting. Hans, thank you so much. For the people at home, we are back next Wednesday with a regular Dutch episode. But please scroll past all the previous episodes. We have a lot of different interviews in English, so there's a lot to enjoy. Thank you so much, Hans. Thank you again, and I'll hope to meet you one day in Denmark and have a stroll to the distillery with you. Would be very cool.
Be lovely. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone at home. Have a great day, and see you guys next week.